In today's innovative teaching tip, we're going to take a look at card sorts. Card sorts are a great activity that can be used as an activating strategy, a quick formative assessment during a lesson, or even as a review activity. It is also very easy to differentiate the card sort based on the needs of the students individually or as a group. So, what exactly is a card sort? Well, when doing a card sort, students have the opportunity to develop an understanding of semantic relationships. Students will do this by classifying or categorizing a series of words, concepts, pictures, graphs, or ideas. You may choose to have students complete a closed sort or an open sort. In a closed sort, the categories in which the students will sort the cards is given by the teacher. In an open sort, students will determine the different categories that they want to use for their groupings. In either case, students will still be expected to explain the rationale of how and why they grouped the cards the way that they did. On this slide, you can see a few examples of different card sorts. The biggest thing that you want to think about is once you've determined the learning goal, you will decide what content you would like on each card. From the examples, you can see that card sorts can lend themselves to every content area. We're going to take a deeper look at a data set example and a science example. So when we look at this data example involving one variable statistics, you'll see that there are a total of 10 data sets that students would have available to them. And with each data set, there's a corresponding histogram, box plot, measures of central tendency, and outliers. We'll talk about some ways that you can use this activity to scaffold for different students, but this is just one example of a card sort that you can use. Another example of a card sort might be to take a previously created matrix organizer. In this matrix organizer for the characteristics of the 4 macromolecules, you can see that we have each of the biomolecules listed here, and then the monomer that goes along with it, the elements that are present, the structure, function, and examples, an example of how it affects the body. So the reason why I show this is because when you're going to create a card sort, you may want to think about some matrix organizers that you've perhaps used in the past with your students as a graphic organizer. So to get started, the nice thing about these card sorts is that they're fairly easy to set up and create. You can either use a teacher-created or student-created card sort. So first, in a teacher-created sort, you can decide on how many different cards or categories you would like for each student to use in the sort. From that example just a few moments ago, this Algebra 1 example involving one variable statistics, I would likely print each of these different squares onto a different color paper. So I'd have my data sets all on one color, histograms on another, box plots on another. And the reason why I would do that is so that I can quickly check from the room that students are only putting one histogram with a data set. And also, if I wanted to scaffold this, and maybe I feel that some students are only ready to work with matching the histograms, the measures of central tendency, and the data sets together, I can just call out the 3 colors cards that they would be matching together and then tell them to put those box plot and outliers to the side for now, but then when they're ready, I can have them pull those back in. So again, I can scaffold in those other categories for individual students as they're ready for it and just by a quick look. Again, going back to that matrix organizer that we took a look at, you can quickly take that document and transform it into a card sort for a review activity. The other thing that you can do is you can have a student-created card sort. In this type of sort, you would simply give students a topic and then ask them to write down a set number of terms, each on a different piece of paper or on a Post-it note. And for that different piece of paper, I'd have them just cut out maybe a few squares or just tear their paper into a few of them. What you would then do is after you tell them to say, write down 6 terms that they can think about when thinking about government, I will then group my students accordingly and then have them sort their collective group of words that they came up with into different categories of their choosing. Since the students have created the words based on the topic, you will then have them also create the labels for those categories. Depending on the topic and if the topic lends itself to it, in both types of these sorts, you can have students try to see if they can find a different way to organize the words or concepts. So even in this algebra example, they might think, okay, instead of organizing these so that the histograms match up with the data sets and the box plots and the corresponding measures of central tendency and outliers, you might have the students, there are some of these diagrams that have no outliers. So maybe I would have them group histograms based on whether or not they have outliers or don't, or if it's an approximately normal distribution or if it's a skewed distribution. So you can allow those students to get creative with how they're going to sort them. In addition, you can extend the sort by asking the students to take what they have done and create a written summary of how or why they sorted the cards in the way that they did. Because again, that is a very important part of this learning process. So setting it up, we have a few different options, and it depends on if you have students in a face-to-face setting or if you even have a mix of students who are in face-to-face and remote, or if you just have purely remote students. So you can create a physical card sort with just enough sets for each group, and if you like this activity and you plan on using it in the future, you may want to consider laminating those cards. You can also create a Jamboard, which we have here. So when we go to this parabola sort, you'll see that the students have the option to pull the different pieces to wherever they think that they go. And again, since all of these squares are very movable, if they realize that something that they have isn't correct, they can easily move it to another location. And in a Jamboard, you can have each student create a copy of this and then monitor them through Schoology, or you can set up different jams for different sorts if you'd like. The other option is through Desmos.com. Desmos currently is set up primarily for math teachers and has activities pre-created. So we're going to take a look at the same parabola sort but on Desmos. When you go into the Desmos sort, if it's a pre-created activity, you can go to the student preview and see what students will be asked to do. The nice thing in Desmos is if a student drags a card to a location, it actually links the cards together. So we can see right now that if I'm just dragging these pieces, I have 5 cards linked in intercept form, and I have 3 cards linked together in standard form. I can move this around as well. And if I realize, this probably isn't in the correct location, I can take it and move it to another one, or I can pull it back out. The nice thing about Desmos also is that as a teacher, I can view my students' progress as they go. If you're not a math teacher and you'd like to learn more about how to create a card sort in Desmos, please follow up in the next video that is about how to create a Desmos card sort for any subject area. I hope you found this helpful about how to work with card sorts, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to anyone in Teaching and Learning.